Welcome, I'm Droniak, and this is a look at the new Revenant class that's going to be added to Guild Wars 2 in its upcoming Heart of Thorns expansion pack. The footage in the background is from a beta event that was organized last week, where I got to play with some of the new content for about 1.5 hours. The first thing I did was to create a Revenant. Now, I could only choose to make a human Revenant at this point, but that's obviously going to be different in the final version of the Heart of Thorns expansion pack. We're going to be able to create a Revenant of every species. I suspect that is because the dialogue and maybe the voiceovers for the other races might not be finalized yet, so they let us play around with the race that was furthest along. The Revenant is a heavy armor class like the Warrior and Guardian, and it manipulates energy from the mists in order to invoke the power of legends from the past, unleashing immense attacks that dominate foes and unleash chaos on the battlefield. At least that is what it says down below in the description. We'll get to how it actually works a bit later on. Now back to character creation. I tried to spot any changes or additions, but I couldn't find any. Although I haven't really played a lot of human characters, or created all that many of them, so there might actually be some new stuff there that I missed. In terms of actually creating a Revenant, there's only really one important choice, and that is related to the blindfolds that they wear. What it says is, I fight with my whatever blindfold on to shut out the distractions of the physical world and focus my magical inner sight. In this case, the Resplendent Curtain, which is for Revenants who choose to make a more elegant and stylish impression, because even if they can't see the world around them, it can still see them. The next option is the Veil Piercer. Form follows function with this blindfold, designed both to cover a Revenant's eyes and help punch through the barriers that conceal the unseen. Lastly, there is the Mist Scrim, which is a simple, straightforward and utterly effective blindfold that is preferred by Revenants who rely on utility and efficiency to get results. The one I picked is the Veil Piercer, not that it really matters because it didn't actually have any effect, and I doubt it will in the final version of the Heart of Thorns expansion either. It's just a nice way to pick out a fancy blindfold to start with. The Revenant is a heavy armor class, and in this beta I started out with level 80 exotic gear. That looks pretty cool, but the standard dice look horrible on it, all of them. Fortunately I had access to all my own dice, so I could make her look a little bit better once I started playing. So this is what the Revenant looks like in game. I think they look pretty cool with their heavy armor and blindfolds on. As you'll probably notice throughout this video, almost everyone was playing a Revenant during this beta event. Now let's get to the fun stuff, which is actually playing a Revenant and talking about how it works. The Revenant that I created during this beta was somewhat limited because it is a beta and some things were probably still unfinished and other things they might want to keep under wraps. For example, the trait lines, there were 3 available trait lines with all the traits within them available for use, or at least a large amount of them. But the other trait lines, the remaining 2, were not in evidence, and effectively it didn't really allow for creating very specialized builds because one trait line was very much about vitality and defense, the other was about crit chance, and another was about ferocity, I believe. This, in combination with the default gear that everyone received, level 80 celestial gear with all stats, meant that everyone was pretty much playing a jack of all trades Revenant, and there really wasn't anything we could do about that, since as far as I could tell we didn't have any access to our banks or anything, or the trading post for that matter. In essence, it seems that ArenaNet wanted the beta testers to play the Revenant in their own ways, and as a result created a build that is fairly generic but not really good at anything specific. So if you see you know, very low damage numbers or very low defense, realize that it's a generic build. That's about as, you know, celestial as it can get. So a more specialized build might be far more able to clear through enemies, apply a lot of conditions, or clear a lot of conditions. I'm not going to go into the traits right now because they're likely going to change before release, and there's not a lot of point in talking over 3 lines when there's another 2 to be revealed, and of course the Revenant specialization as well. The desire of ArenaNet for beta testers to play the Revenant in a variety of ways, but safely with celestial equipment, is also evident in the legends and weapons that they chose to give us, which were both defensive and offensively oriented options. Now, the legends are what I'm going to cover first, since they're the very interesting and unique part of the Revenant class. The F1 and F2 above my weapon skills allow me to channel different legends, in this case either King Jalis Ironhammer or Malix the Unyielding. The effect of changing between these is to completely swap my utility bar, including healing and elite skills. Now, in this beta version there were no alternative skills for these setups, so if I picked Jalis Ironhammer, I got the exact same 3 utility skills, 1 healing skill and 1 elite skill, with no options. However, I could change the order of the utility skills, so it's possible that there might be some more variety in the final version of the Revenant, where you could perhaps create a slightly customized Malix or Jalis skill line. The Jalis skill line really emphasizes defensive play and supportive play. You can grant allies stability, and you're able to taunt enemies so that they will only attack you, among a variety of other supportive abilities mostly, which makes it a real ideal fit with the hammer ranged weapon that we were given, which, well, really feels like a hammer even though it's ranged. The attack speed is slow, it has a powerful stun, and there's this interesting shield that you can summon that blocks ranged attacks in front of you with the number 4 skill. It seems like a fairly solid setup, especially in combination with the Jalis Ironhammer legend, but at the same time it felt a little unwieldy, at least with the traits and the gear that we received, which was far from ideal for truly tanking or supporting a party, or even yourself. Still, the hammer does very much feel like the weapon to use if you're going to zone control and soak up damage with a very tanky build. I think that if you get the right armor and the right runes and traits, then it can be a very solid setup that can stand right alongside the Guardian and Warrior in the front line of battle. It also helps that the Revenant seems to have a fairly large health pool, because I started out with 22,000 health. Now, that is of course with Celestial Runes, which also provides vitality, but I think it'll turn out to be one of the tankier classes in the game. Now, personally, I preferred the Axe-Mace combination, especially with the Malix Legend utility tree. It's a very mobile setup and lets you jump to enemies and deal a bunch of condition damage. You can apply Torment, Burning and Chill, all with just the Axe and Mace weaponry. In addition, the Malix line adds even more condition stacking potential and allows you to cleanse conditions off yourself and allies very effectively. Plus the elite skill makes your conditions even more powerful. It also has great combo potential. As you press the 2 skill to lay a line of fire on the enemy, you can use number 3 to jump on top of them and cause a burning explosion. And if you combine this with the number 9 of the Malix support set, then your enemies have just gained a bunch of burning and torment stacks while being pushed in all directions away from you, so you can casually pick the weakest target and jump straight to it, take it down before they can do anything, and get back close to you. So there's a lot of great potential here in both lines and with both weapon sets that I feel make the Revenant a very interesting addition to the Guild Wars 2 class selection. I do have to note that the weapons on display here are not all that the Revenant will receive. We were just given a hammer, an axe and a mace. The axe and the mace were even locked to specific hands, so you could only use the axe offhand and the mace main hand. I doubt that that will stay the same. I think the Revenant will gain a few more weapons, even though it can't weapon swap in combat. And I think we'll probably be able to use the mace in the offhand as well, and of course the axe in the main hand. I don't think there's really any class in the game right now that has axe or mace limited to just one hand, so I doubt they do this only for the Revenant. I would be lying if I said I hadn't died a lot. It's quite challenging to take a new class with weapons and items and traits that are far from ideal into completely new content with fairly challenging-ish enemies. They're mostly the same enemies that you're facing in the Silverwastes, with a few new additions that have some interesting mechanics. It also didn't help that I was playing on the European servers at like 3 in the morning, only with other people who had gotten a portal to the Maguuma whatever. So there weren't a lot of people there, and most objectives were hostile rather than cleared out. So a lot of the time I was alone fighting against large waves of enemies. Still, I told myself I wanted a Revenant main when they first unveiled it, and after playing around with it for a little over an hour, I can say that that hasn't changed. I'd love to see more of the class, but for now it seems like an interesting new addition that has a lot of potential and some very different playstyles. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment with your thoughts on the new Revenant class, and let me know if you're going to be playing one in the new expansion. For now, I'll see you in the next video.